All right. We are live, back with another Old World Exploration Tuesday Night Live. This week, and we're going to hop right into it. I've got Kairos from I Am Kairos channel joining me once again to bring him his discoveries and thoughts on the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm really looking forward to this. San Francisco, one of those cities that flies in the face of the narrative, really obviously. I mean, they all do, but this one's really obvious. So I think it's quite a treat to have Kairos's work um, available to us from this area. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Hey Kairos, how you doing?
Hello there, and great to be back. And hope that everyone will enjoy the presentation tonight. It's Chris and I have had these video conferences and live shows a number of times. And Chris, it's been a real pleasure. I know that you are very thorough in your investigation from the narrative standpoint, and then showing a lot of the pictures of what buildings looked like or look like now. But it's exciting to be able to show you some of the buildings that I know you've researched or heard about on my Direct Explorer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting area that is down there. Very interesting area.
What I wanted to do was begin by just showing a brief video just to get people familiar with the area, to show how expansive it is. Um, this is the San Francisco Bay Area, and I have a panorama compilation from a number of videos. If you've seen some of these, this one here, let's go ahead and begin. So this is looking out from the summit of Mount Tamalpais in Marin County on the north side of the Golden Gate Bridge approach, looking out towards Mount Diablo on the horizon. And then we see San Francisco City in the center, and then down Ocean Beach and beyond. And then that is the Pacific Ocean. So we're going to look at three distinct locations today and with a little greater detail, and look at some of the conditions of the materials as we find them. Alcatraz will be one. I thought people would enjoy seeing the city landscape from such a high elevation. Relatively clear day, looking out upon the ferry building, the Embarcadero area. They have a Ferris wheel on display now. Then we see the marina area and Fisherman's Wharf, the Ghirardelli Square. Welcome in all chatters. Great to have everyone here. This is the area that is approaching the site of the Pan Pacific in the foreground now. It's approximately 2 miles by 1/2 mile. We're going to go look closely at Fort Point once again underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. This is from the Marin Headlands. So Alcatraz in full view, and Treasure Island, site of the Golden Gate International Exhibition behind. Then we're going to get a special treat. I've seen this property now from many locations. This is Battery Cavalo, and we touched on it briefly. I'm calling it the biggest star fort in the Bay Area that no one knows about. So we're going to go into this site through the brick tunnels, and I'll be standing on that ridge right behind where that sign is in the foreground. We're going to be showing these videos and likely able to stop briefly for some questions or continue to let it roll. But I wanted to get everyone familiar with the location. We'll look at the maps in just a moment and really show the proximity of these three massive fortresses, that they do have things in common. So we're going to find that they're made during the time either during or shortly after the American Civil War. They're made mostly of bricks. They're precise geometry and masonry, cut granite, and varying degrees of wear. But the craftsmanship is unmatched. These are not showing significant or any damage from any of the Bay Area earthquakes, which are
Let's
very
let's preface
well
this
known.
too. with a little San Francisco history, if you don't mind. How San
Please.
Francisco, relatively new city, isn't it? Like 1849, am I right? Is that the year San Francisco became a city? I'm sure you know a lot more.
So I know how to describe the narrative, I guess you could say,
Yep,
how to repeat back what I've been told.
yep.
Um, so I think you might be better at that. But we're going to look at patterns and similarities. So as we're looking at the city and the map and the location that we're going to be focusing on, so West Coast, United States, San Francisco, we have the approximately 7 mile by 7 mile precision laid out city. So very interesting. Uh, Supposedly a population of 1,000 in 1848. So very late start with a tremendous amount of build out over the time period.
Hmm.
But I want to show the locations of where we'll be. So here's Alcatraz in the center, Treasure Island back here. Under the Golden Gate Bridge is Fort Point, but Battery Cavalo is the one that has caught my eye on a number of occasions. It's just in this Fort Baker area. Most of this is accessible park. So you're able to go in, drive down into this area. There is a parking space here, and there are trails, and you come up through the trail and you find your way going through here and into the actual battery itself, which from the sky now doesn't really resemble a lot. But if you know where to look, you will start to see that we have significant portals, entries, openings, walls, uh, battery points, and then there's a tremendous earthwork, which is part of this building, part of this structure. So you notice from back at this corner, all the way over to this corner is all part of the layout of the property. So we need to take into consideration that that's over 1,100 feet. So quite large in a very unusual location. So very remote. And during this time period, when it was said to be built leading into the 1870s, there, there were no bridges, there were no roads, there was really not a lot of support for materials because we were told that all of this amazing construction was currently happening in every one of these local communities using red brick. But we want to, again, use the tools that we have and see what's available. So I like to toggle over to the terrain feature of just Google Map. It's like, I call it like a LiDAR light. So you can see that it does have geometric mirrored precision on each side of these wings, which does have sort of the appearance of,
Can you zoom that a little bit more, if you don't mind, just real
I
quick?
can, but we
There, yeah,
start to lose we lose the resolution of the terrain
yeah.
on Google Map. They limit you.
Hmm.
So we'll be starting here. Then we're going to return to Alcatraz, not escape. And we're going to have an opportunity to review some of the footage that I have from a number of videos as we enter the dock facility, walk around the front, enter the so-called parade ground, which turns out that all of this area, all of the concrete pad is covering up a very large number of Civil War or earlier era underground brick passageways. And we'll come to see that the entire island is constructed for the most part. So we're going to find tremendous buttresses made of large megalithic stones, large granite pieces that are making up features. Each of these buildings are all brick. We're going to go underground into the portal. And we'll find out that what so far what these two have in common is they're built with red brick in remote locations at a time where bricks would be difficult to obtain, built in a very quick time period, and a lot of records are lacking. So it's one of the interesting stories. So Cavallo,
I was surprised
Alcatraz.
at how much the need for defense was justified, military defense. You know, you sent me those three links for on the three forts. Like, why would you
That's
need
correct.
to, you know?
So we're seeing the what's being described as the third system of fortresses. There were 42 of these sites, and the two West Coast ones that are noted are Fort Point, which we'll return to, and then Alcatraz. Battery Cavallo is kind of it's not considered a fort. They call it a battery, and it sort of fits into a different time period. But I encourage anyone to use the map feature, explore this terrain thoroughly. As you hover over, you will see all of the features start to appear, and they will tell you where all the things are. So this Hawk Hill, we start to come into another bunker system,
Hmm.
tremendous bunker system with the openings that go through. So this is right nearby. And this entire area is full of bunkers and batteries and forts. And then you cross here, this entire lower section, all brick construction, fortresses. Presidio has a very old history. And then we start to go down the coast where it's continuous um, military infrastructure. So we start to have some questions about why they why they would need all this. What were they
Seem,
planning for? What were they
yeah,
anticipating?
yeah, exactly. It's
Sometimes we
interesting.
look at the conditions of some of these fortresses, and maybe we have questions. It looks like uh, was there a war that we lost that we
Hmm.
weren't told about?
Were they trying to defend this magnificent old world city?
And a lot of times the supposed targets that these fortresses would be using would be easy to avoid
Hmm.
if you were actually an invader. And some of them seem like they don't really aim at an individual target. Let's see if I can show you one more before we move along. This is the Caltopo tool, and this is a great tool if you enjoy studying maps, distances, terrain. So it has a very useful menu over here. So this is their basic tool. You can toggle it to structures and you'll see the entire map will populate. It'll probably overwhelm the computer. Let's get in a little closer to our tour location. So we are hovering over Fort Baker and the location of Battery Cavallo, and you can see its shape here in this basic tool.
Hmm.
But I like to use on the menu, go into the relief shading and shaded relief, and then we're going to get a much better look.
Oh wow, yeah.
So you can see that this is precision geometric earthwork. So it's not just the top and the tunnels, but it's this very predictable, very steep shape that makes this defensive type wall. They were referring to this as an earthen parapet, but with all the blocked up openings, there's really no way of knowing how deep these structures go and if they connect to other forts that are nearby.
Hmm.
Um,
They say they were made of dirt. These this buildup around the structure.
I believe so,
Yeah,
but
I saw
I'm
that
not.
too.
But when we see the condition of the bricks, it's
Hmm.
um, it's difficult to determine how it could survive with just a dirt foundation. And
Yeah, over time.
there's so many items that are that are covered.
Yeah.
Okay, I have my cue. I've got some presentation here. We're going to show a little bit about the layout of this fort. So as you notice, this is just a line drawing, and each one of these are different types of gun mounts, and you can see the drawing of where the tunnels go through. But more importantly, this is the 1,000-foot span. And then we see that it's a mirror image of itself, and it really does have a familiar spread, eagle, bird,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
phoenix, owl, whatever bird you want to choose. Very fascinating. So this is a 1925 aerial photo, according to them. So we notice, so 1925, very early, very high quality, very high resolution, and we see the condition of the land at that time. So you notice they have a large entrenched fortress. A lot of earthwork has been done to create these roads. There's no foliage. So we see that the land is completely barren. It's nothing like that today. You notice from the map, it's difficult to tell that it's even there. So many trees. So 1925, we don't see any evidence of any occupation by anyone. It already looks abandoned, and we notice these pyramidal tips with structure and the portals. Another an aerial photo, very early year and yet tremendous resolution. Great detail, the adjoining fortress here, the mirror image of itself in every way. And then up above, we have more fortress. And I've seen some brick buttresses and possible buried things, which is, this is now essentially it's all a eucalyptus tree forest now. So it's impossible to see or go in. So very difficult area. So here's probably the highest resolution, 1938 possibly, uh, imagery. And you can see the great rendering of the shadows,
Mm-hmm.
something that's a lot of the photos that we question. I find the easiest way to break down the photo, to even consider it being real, is that you look at those shadows and you establish where the first shadows or the most shadows are, and see where you think in your mind how an item should appear predictably
Mm-hmm.
if it had a shadow on that day. So we see these are the same direction, looks pretty legit, but no foliage.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a photo I took um, from above on that hill I showed you where that secondary fort was located, and we're able to look down into the overgrowth and those pyramidal shaped knobs that I had shown you in the aerial. These would just be considered hills unless you had a good zoom lens. People see this and they would just think it's just a ridge, and you show up and it's fenced off, and so people don't really want to go in there. Um, but we're going to show that it might be the biggest star fort in the Bay Area. I'm going to let this roll, and unless you mention to stop, I'd just kind of like to narrate it a little bit and just show you where we are. So we're in the center apex of that center connected brick arched structure, Golden Gate Bridge to the back. So they have these interconnecting tunnels. Now notice these openings are all welded shut, extremely thick metal, and the condition of the bricks are incredible. So they have bolted and welded shut, multiple points, probably half-inch thick plate. Now I'm pointing to the location where the hinges were mounted, and that is set directly into machined granite. So we're encountering high-quality red brick, high-quality barrel-vaulted arch brick with complicated geometry, and cut granite on site. So that's one of the things that we're going to be comparing with Alcatraz and Fort Point, having the same components. So everything is intentionally overplanted. You see the little flags. They are actively covering this.
Mm.
but it is accessible. And the view is amazing. But we need to think about what life would be like in 1875 when someone decided this would be a great place to build a fort. And it seems like if any ships had entered into the bay, this would be maybe the
Yeah.
last chance to stop them, because um, you can't see too well, and this is not a
They,
gunpoint.
yeah, they need
So,
serious range too. Serious range.
and we don't know the ability of them to practice or to range find, but we're also finding that many of the stories with these fortresses, again, built in an early year, not finished, abandoned,
Hmm.
never actually armed or used or seen military service, and then either let to decay, be destroyed, or in some cases, locked away. I'm curious what's behind each of these doors.
Hmm.
So they have granite mount point for the door hardware, granite sills, and I'm not on ground level, I'm on dirt. So I don't know that a structure of this magnitude would be able to self-support on a dirt foundation, given its
Hmm.
location.
Yeah.
So notice the precision brickwork, tremendous amount of graffiti.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Do you think there's something to that as well, as far as covering up?
It seems to be the case. It seems like the graffiti becomes a distraction, and maybe people can't see past the paint.
Hmm.
What's the paint covering, or what's nearby that you would have seen if it wasn't for that tag? But we see this looks just like the other fortresses. It has the same angular slant, the same brick header, the same shape of the arch, same dimensions. Now this all looks to be original brick with no modifications over the years other than paint.
And perfect arches. Really
So
looks
look, how about
high
this? How about this
quality.
precision?
Oh
So
yeah, look how they weave it in. Wow.
no, so I think I might need to stop. No, we're gonna,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. But those bricks were all interconnected with complicated angles on the outside, coming
Yeah.
off of an arc radius.
That's nuts.
So we're told that these brick barrel vaults would be a result of using wooden false work. So they're going to assemble the inverted wood arch in the shape of the completed brick arch. But it's very difficult to get access to the mortar joints when you are doing overhead work,
Hmm.
especially when there's scaffolding or false work in the way. Those bricks looked perfect, and it had a very unusual color of the mortar, not your typical natural gray. It was more of a tan, and it was almost perfectly smooth with the brick. I don't know how they would have tooled those joints with the false work in the way.
You wouldn't be able to
So
see that finish part of it, would you?
you'd be standing up on top of it, and you wouldn't be able
Hmm.
to see it till you removed it, and then you'd maybe do something. So we're on top of one of these batteries, these so-called gun mount points, and we're seeing the familiar concrete that appears to be covering something else. There was evidence of brick. You can see how thin the veneer of that plaster on the turret. You could see those
Hmm.
so-called spider cracks. Someone would refer to those on a plastering wall when those
Yep.
poorly applied plaster applies. It leaves those cracks behind. That's usually a telltale sign of a veneer surface versus a concrete poured object. And we're going to see that very clearly as we revisit Alcatraz. The intentional veneer work, sometimes 3 inches thick. Right, what's below our feet? Exactly. So, out in this massive courtyard with all these connecting brick portals, each one of them has identical construction, and they have the iron door, and they're welded shut. You can see the pivot point for the upper hinge, right corner,
Yep.
granite block, machine block, cut and set into the masonry. Center point, left side, lower screen, also granite, and then lower granite footer. And I was able to sneak a peek through that opening, and it's a very large room, and it's difficult to tell if it has access to underground. With all the things we've seen, you have to assume there's an underground at this point. You see these structures with the leading passageways that go under the upper structure in the upper left. You have to assume they're connected, even if you don't see the welded door. But now we've got the welded door, so we know they're connected.
Yeah.
And again, so this is 1878 or 79, and said to have originally been abandoned before completion and never actually outfitted with weapons. Then maybe a temporary time with some lesser weapons. If you notice on top of that hill, that little stick on the top of the mound, that was a ventilation opening.
Yeah.
And like a ventilation shaft or a chimney or something, a duct. And I found them all over. So we're going to walk through and get a sense of, this is master craftsman work. So this is not something you would ever dream of doing, anything even close. I mean, building a very flat, true plumb straight wall with plumb joints and correct layout, that's years down the road before you'll be allowed to take that on as the journeyman. You are going to mix so many cubic miles of mortar before you ever even get a chance to set a brick. So we're walking south inside this large courtyard, and we see that the construction is identical and mirrored on both sides. And there's the upper brick portal, all overgrown. But as I pan the camera around, you'll notice that the perimeter of the structure maintains a very flat line.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a wonky building. It's not, the foundation adapts to the terrain, but the structure remains flat on top, with it only a couple of feet out in some sections on that topper dirt berm, only a couple feet out of flat in 1,000 feet. So you'll see that's the ridge I speak of. So you can see where the foliage abruptly stops. That's the top of the dirt berm. And then straight ahead, these would be mistaken as hills, but there's masonry coming out the end.
Yeah.
So very early time, and one of the later builds, if you're going to associate it with the third system of fortresses. So Fort Point and Alcatraz considered to be amongst the last of 42 of them, mostly all on the East Coast. Mark had shown us several of his explorers and really focusing on the build, and we're noticing the similarities. Same hand, same design, separated by thousands of miles, with indestructible red brick.
I noticed they're not just a running bond too. They actually have I'm not sure, Flemish bond. It's not your basic running bond of brick. There's an intermittence to it. I noticed in one of the previous tunnels that you had going there.
Right. So the one that I'm looking for that seems to be the strongest, I don't know the name of the bond, but it's 5 bricks set in the conventional method, and then an entire row of bricks that go directly into the wall. And
Yes.
then those courses shift internally, so they interlock continually up the wall until you get to the 5th course, and then you see a repeat.
Mm-hmm.
So you're essentially building a boulder.
Yeah.
You are locking them together, and they're as strong as boulders. So up behind that mound, which was a eucalyptus forest, is another large fort, which is associated with this one, but really difficult to get to. Very little information. So you see that these are very large. So I'm approaching the southern tip of this large fortress, which it certainly seems like there must be something underground. Do those in the
Well,
audience feel like there must be something underground?
otherwise it would seem kind of useless, really.
There's a lot of open space and a very strange design,
Mm-hmm.
very strange shape. So here you can see the upper and the lower portals. This is one of the ventilation tubes, which is still sticking out of the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, off in the distance are the Marin headlands, and that is where I had shown on the map that the many other fortresses from multiple different war eras are contained. Same story once again, built quickly, no construction photos, abandoned, locked away from the public, or buried permanently, um, all throughout. So just this huge building project, which was apparently unneeded, or something else happened, and we're finding these items which are fairly indestructible. But it's I'm not quite sure how to date a brick, how to determine when it was made. Is it
Mm-hmm.
possible to do that? I don't know that. But if you've ever seen some of the hydraulic press stress tests where they compare modern
Mm-hmm.
bricks to old world bricks,
Mm-hmm.
the old world bricks win out by a long shot every
Yep.
single time. So I haven't seen much footage from this location, and there's very little historical information. Essentially, the the photos I showed you, the wiki entries, that Fort Wiki, which is quite a good site if you're interested in these types of locations. This one here deserves a return trip because I think that answers our questions. Does it go underground or not? I think that was a
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah, I
Down
put those
below,
links.
go right ahead.
I was just going to say I put those links in the description so people can go right to the Fort Wiki
Oh, great.
links that we're covering
Perfect.
here today.
Perfect. There's some great photos and some interesting narratives and a lot of other links. And if you happen to live in an area that might have one of these fortresses, you'll get a pretty good start on the story, the location. So this is the other side of the parking lot. Just going to make sure nobody sees what I'm doing. They don't go to extremes to keep people out of here. There's no threatening signs. They don't want you ruining the place, but they don't say no trespassing or don't come in here. And you can
Yet,
obviously see 100 people have been here before me with the paint cans.
yeah, that could change if we get more eyes on it. You never know.
It's yeah, that's true.
Mm.
So very interesting location, and it's a location that doesn't have a real strong explanation. It's very expansive. I'm surprised that those early aerial photos didn't have any gear or any use. They were just, it was like they were documenting it before the trees started to grow. I
Yeah,
don't know.
interesting.
Because those were originally non-public military photos, not public domain
Mm-hmm.
till recently. We're going to take a peek at the condition of the concrete. It appears as it may have a skim coat. There's one of the so-called gun mounts. I don't know if this looks to you as plaster applied over a
Mm-hmm.
damaged surface, or if we're seeing some sort of wear in the concrete that's exposed the aggregate. I don't think that it does that way. Not It's not that
Looks
selective
like
either,
yeah, it looks like a stucco of some sort coating
right?
to my eye.
And we've heard about some of these coatings that resemble marble, the scagliola, the various
Yeah. Yep.
treatments. Just imagine one that's not very complicated. I think they could make it look like concrete if they wanted
Yep.
to.
Yeah, I believe
It'd
it.
probably be pretty easy. So heading back uh, away from this trip, but notice the remote location. So it's about a mile and a half from Alcatraz, and it's about a mile and a half from Fort Point, like a triangle.
Mm.
We're going to now have a look at Alcatraz.
Well, that one's interesting. The one, because Alcatraz and Fort Point have got a little bit more publicity to them. But now I can't even remember the name of the fort you just showed. Comfort,
So Battery Cavalo.
Battery Cavalo, yes.
Battery
Uh,
Cavalo was the one up on the ridge.
Relatively obscure though in comparison with the other two. So it's great that you're showing that. Probably a lot of people have never even heard of Battery Cavallo before. Anyone in the chat heard of that before, or not?
It's fairly different. The location, you need to be really scouring the maps because they don't advertise it. There's no information that's
Mm-hmm.
that's useful. I'm just going to take a short break and let this video play with the audio. It's my Alcatraz preview video, kind of comical, little interaction with the narrative. His top hat's got a different shape, but he's the same guy.
I don't know if we'll get audio, Kairos.
Barrel vaulted ceilings.
Oh,
Barrel
can you
vaulted
guys hear
brick.
that?
Coming in here, we've got unusual doors, granite sills. Yes, sir. And some amazing granite stairs. Quite interesting.
Okay.
Excuse me, right here. I'm doing a short video. I was just curious if you could tell us where they sourced the granite. In the 1840s? Copy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay, look at this. Look at this. Look at these angles. Look at this work. Have a gander. Look at this. Look at this iron. That is not, that
Wow.
is so ancient.
Wow.
The rivets are just worn down. Look at that.
Yeah.
We're back outside the Citadel, so they've done a tremendous amount of work with what they had found. Huge walls, huge walls.
So just to kind of give you the
Wow.
little preview. So this here goes directly. I'm going to let this one run once again. See if I can full screen it, make it look a little better. So we're heading past the island, and it's very easy to see that there are multiple eras of construction. So we're going to be looking for that, looking for the red brick construction, looking for the cut granite, and the extreme structure, but there's also extreme demolition. Notice in this photo, I think you can see it here in a moment, the tip of the island is going to reveal the location of Battery Cavalo right in the background. So this is as you would get off the dock and you see a massive buttress.
Wow.
And then it's falling apart and it's colossal, and it still exists behind the forested area.
Looks
so we're going to
ancient.
look around at some of that, but notice the extreme brick construction. This is some of the earlier building. So the lower floor is all brick and granite. And they have a wonderful narrative for everyone to enjoy. But we look at the size of the upper building. This is all much smaller than Battery Cavalo, but larger than Fort Point. But I think the more interesting part of the trip to Alcatraz is really not the prison. That's where they'd like you to go, and they'd like you to put the headphones on and walk through the tour. But that will prevent you from seeing the obliterated construction and the fact that the entire island is constructed of brick and stone and granite with massive terracing, and it's 1850, and it's a mile and a half offshore, and these guys have quarried stone, apparently from China, according to the ranger. So they were ordering stone, or are they just giving them boulders and it's getting cut on the rock? I mean, we don't know.
Cut with what?
On the rock. Yeah, Alcatraz, the slang for they call it the rock. Yeah, so they brought over the boulders, and then what they had mills to finish. So you see how that's a massive buttress.
Mm-hmm.
That's the section. If you were to go directly over the top of that wall, which is now covered with concrete, is where they have located, by means of some LiDAR scans, the underground tunnel system, which has
Wow.
really been essentially forgotten. But this is the backside of that citadel. So they refer to this as the citadel. And when you look at the map, so you see there's granite and brick everywhere underneath the ivy.
Wow.
Some of the areas that you want to look anytime you're exploring is what's behind the fence. So back here is more construction, but you notice that the brickwork is everywhere, and the concrete current ground level is now attached mid wall somewhere. So when we see this recent style, how about this? They got a commemorative
Oh, wow.
melted brick ball,
Wow.
so you can really get with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's bricks in the ocean. We're going to look at that. So what we're seeing throughout this property are multiple eras of construction, additions, and repurposings. So originally said to be a Civil War fortress, never armed, never used, abandoned, becomes a military prison briefly, not the main property. So how about down here?
Hmm.
How about that?
Wow.
How about them bricks?
Wow.
So they're coming out of the ocean. So then we're going to now make a comparison as we see that Alcatraz is lined with a seawall or some sort of containment. So artificial coastline, really. So how would they have constructed that, being that its foundation is permanently below sea level, just like Fort Point? So we have a similarity to the fortresses built on the current ocean level. So we're on the main parade ground, which is now covered in concrete and destroyed buildings. So we're going to walk into the wreckage, and we're going to find that there's bricks all throughout the island, coming out from behind every tree, every bush, every stone wall. It's mostly bricks. So we're going to think about, based on your research, you examining a lot of the logistics and time period and number of craftsmen that might exist at this point in time, when there's only 1,000 people or 2,000 people on the mainland miraculously building everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've gunnited the entire front
Yep.
of the property below the lighthouse, and we're going to look inside and see what's behind this gunite, but I bet you already know the answer. We're taking guesses. So
Anyone want to guess?
whoever guesses the right answer gets a free brick.
Shh.
Whoops. Uh-oh. It's just dirt. So there's wreckage everywhere, and here we see a plaster coated brick wall
Oh, yeah.
that's made to look like concrete. Sorry about the focus. So down below, we're going to look and see what's the condition of the land. What is their foundation? Was this a great place to choose to build? I don't know. It seems very difficult to get to, especially to abandon it immediately. Becoming a prison, there's different time spans. So the common prison that people are familiar with the story and the criminals and Clint Eastwood and what have you, I believe is in the mid to early 30s and ending in the 60s or something. The date is not that important, but they say they were using it as a Civil War prison too. But they say the top portion, which would ultimately at some point become the largest concrete structure in the world at the time, would be covering the multiple layers of vaulted brick tunnel
Yeah.
systems that go multiple layers underground
Interesting.
that look just like Fort Point and just like Battery Cavalo. So we're going to start to see the condition of the walls and what might have happened. Where is natural And where does
Wow.
brick begin? Like, where does it start and stop? And so we're going to look and, look behind. So we've got these massive granite blocks that are crazy, and then they've got a stack of very questionable bricks with other stones, a lot of granite, tremendous lichen overgrowth. And then we start to get into the megalithic size. This is when we
Yeah.
start to get into the very large granite blocks that are thousands of pounds each.
Hmm.
And they're everywhere. And these are quarried. So they've got saw marks on them. A lot of them have saw marks, and they're not from here. So we have to remember the nearest quarry for this stone locally is 120 miles, but the ranger said it was from China, though. And the rangers over there at Fort Point, they also assured me that the 1,800-foot long megalithic seawall, polygonal, also from China.
Hmm.
They had a connection,
Wow.
I guess.
Yeah,
So we're
the new
starting to
guy.
see that. So look at this underneath the railing. These are granite blocks again,
Hmm.
and they have cut edged, machine corner. But we see the ground level has been changed. We're walking on a much more modern concrete.
Hmm.
So we're below the wall, and you can see the size of the blocks. Now notice that gap that I'm zooming in on, where it just looks like
Yeah.
dirt, right? Just looks like dirt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to find out that this heavy masonry or brick wall was completely undermined, and it was evacuated. The whole area was vacated of brick and turned into dust. Down below, these super large stones. That's a very large amount of masonry, and then it continues up the hill into a very thick brick wall, which is containing the inner catacomb-like structure of the brick vaults.
Oh yeah.
And
That's
then we're going to
crazy.
expose that some of the plaster work is intentionally um, tooled to look like faux stones. So they scratched in like artificial block looking. So it looks like it's supposed to be big blocks,
Yeah.
but it's actually just a coating. So these are the large granite pieces again. Now look above, and the brick just turns into dirt
Hmm.
abruptly, and then it's twisted dirt. Twisted dirt. So people, like I was saying, they're not coming here to look at the architecture, the stonework, to consider the logistics, to think about the time period. They want to go inside and put those headphones in and find out where that guy scratched his way out of his cell,
Hmm.
which also seems very unlikely. I did have a chance to go in there, and I think you'd have been caught. I think you'd have been caught.
Yeah. Think of
So
the
is
story.
it granite or transformed brick? I don't know. Some of it appears to be transformed. Other has um, the saw marks, the straight, predictable saw marks and edge trim with saw marks, uh, indicating power tools well before power tools. So
Yeah.
keep in mind the volume of brick. Okay, look at those giant megalithic footings that this huge wall was built upon. Also take note the color of the brick. Certain areas are very white and ashen color, like this area here. It's still brick, but it seems to have lost a lot of its color.
Hmm.
So we have megalithic blocks as stairs.
Yeah.
So those are cut and fitted, just like the underground where I had asked the ranger. So this ground level we're walking on is likely what would have been added when being converted into the prison, the federal prison access road. But we don't know how much of this brick wall would be exposed before you got to ground level. It had to have been at ground level at some point. Okay, so we're going to go. That was the part one. Let's see if we're going to see what's happening next. So we see the incredible so-called pediment. The
Mm-hmm.
assembled, those are huge machine routed granite pieces. So those are one piece, and they're extremely large. You'll notice on the top of the opening, both left and right, you'll see that rectangular dark notch on the top when I go back up there. It appears to be to accept drawbridge functioning.
Oh yeah.
That's where dual chains or cables or something would have locked a large door into place. That seems to be the receptacle. This is a plaster wall that's made to look like blocks.
Yeah, like what you were talking about, right? Yeah.
And then it's going to be, oops, no,
Huh.
brick, brick
Interesting.
again. But once again, the tourist just wants to get past this terrible hill so we can go inside the prison. They don't, they're not interested. They're on their phone. That's not what they're there for.
Mm-hmm.
So this lighthouse, I don't know exactly what it's made of. I know what it appears to be made out of. The surrounding foundations have evidence of brick construction along with concrete. This lighthouse has a strange story. So we're going to talk about let me see if I can get that to get off there. Uh, these Fresnel lenses
Mm.
that are inside of the lighthouse towers, the lighthouse itself. For those that are not familiar, these are very large, sometimes 10 feet tall, cast and cut and shaped and properly tuned to light so that they can transmit the beam in a long, visible direction, and at times amplifying the light source for the lighthouse. And these can be seen for extreme distances. But this one is supposedly the first lighthouse on the West Coast,
Hmm.
which seems like an unusual location as it's well inside the bay.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to actually enter the bay and deal with all the treacherous rocks and
Yeah.
coastline before you'd actually see the light.
Mm.
So that's a strange story. But Fort Point would have had a Fresnel lens. Point Arena, Point Reyes Station, many of them up the coast notoriously have them, and it's difficult to see them. They may be removed, or sometimes the exhibit is closed, and they'll even put a tarp over the Fresnel, so from outside you may not see it. So we've got
Interesting.
some sort of a 1909 stamping with very large black obsidian-like aggregate in the concrete, not your common base gravel. So have a look at this granite again on the entrance when I point back up. Here's where it transitions from brick to fake
Mm-hmm.
stone, plaster finish, possibly 2 to 3 finger width of plaster.
That's a lot.
So these are massive granite stones,
Wow.
multiple keystones. And
Mm-hmm.
how about that top angle? Where have we seen that on all the Capitol buildings and city halls?
Mm-hmm.
Notice that rectangular slot. If you saw that on top, right there,
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that is where a pull mechanism would have pulled up a drawbridge into that space perfectly, because this wooden porch or what have you would normally not allow you to walk right into the building. There's a gap, and
Mm.
ground level is no longer the same height, so we don't know. But Fort Point has that on the front of its door. That also has the enormous entrance with the drawbridge accommodation. Notice the machine marks; those are cut. Those are not chisel marks. Those
Mm-hmm.
are some sort of saw marks. So again, granite from a great distance, finding its way to one of the most difficult build sites at one of the earliest times of construction means and methods, with the smallest population and likely unskilled. So here we see brick emerging from the faux concrete.
Yeah.
So I'd like to take you down these stairs and give you a sense of how thick it can be applied. That looks like concrete, right?
Mm.
Looks just like concrete. To the untrained eye, it's just old weathered concrete.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, no, it's not the case at all. This is a veneer, and they went to great lengths to cover that
Yeah.
masterful masonry, or
Big job.
extremely damaged masonry that would raise too many questions if you saw, something happening. So here we're seeing the main front building of the prison, and they've done some very, very poor additions showing the ignorance of modern day builders when trying to use a building. So everything is essentially in great shape except for these arches, which are a mix of blocks, concrete, and plywood. So very bad. I'm not sure the overall makeup of the entire building. It may have some areas that have been repaired, but the earliest photos have exactly the same appearance with dimensions between windows and arches and upper detailing, except all made of brick. So they made an exact replica out of concrete, except not out of brick. So this is one of their open cells where you can go in here and probe around and fantasize about your great escape, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You're not chipping through that. It's not sand. It's not crust. A lot of people don't realize this. I think you are well aware. I believe you've probably built on a fresh concrete slab somewhere. Probably been on the job when the concrete was fresh. And they need to wait at least 28 days before you really start doing anything significant. But the interesting concept of concrete and the older concretes and concrete subjected to seawater or possibly salt air is they will continue to harden until destroyed. They get harder and harder and harder. And that might be a clue as to the age of some of these brick walls, because the mortar, which is a cementitious product and related to concrete, is also going to continue to harden. Many times we see the mortar joints left behind stronger than the brick itself. So how old are they to become that strong? The mortar. So I'm noticing that the prison, which I didn't spend a lot of time with because that wasn't the point of being there, it appears to be a big metal prison built inside of a very, very large, older, repurposed structure.
Interesting.
You wouldn't need to build it like that type of a fortress on this location. People think everybody's going to just be jumping off and trying to swim in.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen.
You think the opposite would be true, actually. Less fortified because you're isolated.
Just build a bunch of huts and put up some tall fences and, whatever. So we're going to go down into the famous courtyard that you would have seen in some of the movies where the prisoners are out there trying to figure out how to make a raft out of jackets. But you'll notice under this applied at a later time, there's brick underneath there again. So is this a concrete covered older opening into the greater citadel? Notice the size of those steps that were clearly added after the massive risers. So the massive risers were there, and then they added that stairway afterwards. And I don't know what's underneath what looks like concrete, but I'm looking for the cracking signature. I'm looking for parallel joint lines that might be leaching through.
Oh, yeah.
Possible spider cracking. I don't remember if it had a hollow sound to it. It seemed like it was quite a bit thicker. But they do have they've got a couple shuffleboard courts right there.
Oh, yeah.
A little shuffleboard. Right, these guys so this is like a shuffleboard stadium. That's what they built it for. These guys are up there, and these guys are down there. It's the playoffs. So there's a huge, there's a massive wall that contains this, and it goes into the structure, and it has other areas of construction. So you're able to pop out and look across the bay and have a peek at how degraded this concrete is. And we might compare that to some of the concrete in some of the other areas, but it seems that that's extreme wear. That's extreme wear. Here's a little slideshow of what it looks like now from across the bay. That white section, it's under construction of some sort. So there is some new construction to be discovered going on or renovating. All those pictures, what I'd love to show possibly later indicate the size of the walls, the size of the constructed walls. The reason they call Alcatraz, the slang, the rock, is they'd like you to believe it's built on a big rock,
Yeah.
but it's actually constructed and possibly out of the water. I don't know how deep those underpassages go. They have limited tours and they're expensive and short, and many places are blocked up. So we're walking down the hill and looking at the edge of the cliff, and there's bricks just
Mhm.
everywhere. And here's a broken wall. So many eras of destruction that have just been built over. So here is one of the later buildings that may have been used to keep prisoners active with projects. I don't know. But we're going to get a chance to look at sort of the unseen area, like, for example, this mound, which has square bricks popping out of very damaged landscape. So very angular, very obvious. And the mortar is a good giveaway. Large chimney visible. So this is on the tip facing inland. Kind of off the beaten path of the tour. So inside of the main prison block, we'll see the inside arches are also granite. Um, they've been painted over many, many times, so it's difficult to see. But the opening, the original opening, is enormous. So we're coming out the back, and we're going to look at another entrance, which you can see has been painted over or possibly attempted to be plastered over, yet a close inspection reveals it's still the granite again. So on the other side of this entrance, we have a matching entrance, appears to have provisions for drawbridge again. So we see in these large simulated cut stones that are dividing the eras. And then we'll find the condition of the wall is very bad. And this appears to be the plastered over brick wall again. It appears to be some of the metal uh, containment plates to strengthen. Seeing some of those. You can see the course of red bricks
Mm-hmm.
on that wall right there. So let's look in the bushes. What's in here? Oh, constructed stones, joints
Mm-hmm.
behind the fern. And, it's we know what bricks look like, and it's difficult sometimes to distinguish what a damaged brick looks like, and pattern recognition starts to kick in. So at what point do you see brick? You might ask yourself, when is it brick? Is it brick yet? Now? Okay, maybe now.
Hmm.
What's up here? Okay, we know that's some sort of masonry. There's
Yeah.
brick up there. So so these people here are just having a great day, heading down after exploring, and they don't realize the big story is who built this. So in the website for Alcatraz tours, quite informative. They do tell you about what a strenuous hike it is. There's a lot of hill,
Hmm.
and they ask you to allow plenty of time. Look at the condition of this wall going from different size blocks and one
Yeah.
wall with a section that is missing, and then bricks again. So we're on the downward path, and we're on the old concrete. Looks to be a cast concrete railing, and then we see again all the added concrete, but the brick core is down low and extremely well built and very, very thick. Now notice the obvious, those are huge, but you can see the joints through the plants.
Mm-hmm.
That is covering a massive wall with huge granite pieces, and there's bricks coming out everywhere.
Yeah. Hmm.
pieces of brick, and you just zoom in.
Yeah.
But it's no conspiracy. The bricks are here, so people have to answer: how did the bricks get there? Who made the bricks? Who assembled the bricks? Who mixed the mortar? Who provided the dry materials so you could mix the mortar and bring it over here? And what kind of a boat? These are legitimate questions that should not be ridiculed. These deserve a very simple answer, and it should be part of recorded history, wouldn't you think?
You would think so.
Some construction pictures that show this monumental super citadel. Was there a larger brick building being built at that time period in San Francisco? So they're claiming 1866 on this header with a relief style number.
Interesting.
So it's not engraved. They removed a large amount of granite off the mother block, leaving the numbers behind. Even more complicated. So here we're heading back into the inside. So this goes on in many directions, multiple rooms, false floors, blocked up entrances, strange repairs, bizarre discoloration of the brick that doesn't resemble red. And then notice the terrible quality of repairs or even just blocking up. So that one door was blocked up with cinder blocks and they didn't even wipe the mortar off. They didn't even tool the joints. It's just, look at that dripping.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, who did that? The ranger? Maybe the ranger did that.
Yeah.
But they allow you to go in. They have rooms where you can learn the real story if you want. So that's a wooden floor, and that's a hatch. And I'm sure there's an extensive underground. I do have a friend of mine, electrical contractor, was over doing and running infrastructure in the tunnels, and he's been under there, and he didn't really realize what he was seeing. Shot me a bunch of pictures, and they're just adapting conduit and fixtures onto existing brick strength. So this is a very permanent structure. So inside they've got a lot of interior plaster over the brick and then painted. But it's look at this here, little door, giant door. There's the granite footer, just like at Battery Cavalo in the doorway, except these ones here are accessible, but the granite blocks where the hinges would have been are visible.
Looking quite level too. Not a lot of shifting seems to have gone on there. The steps.
These guys were amazing. So it makes you wonder, what type of hand tools did they have available for this project? Like, how we think about their brick trowel of some sort. Was it made of metal, or were they having to use wooden ones? How were they carrying the mortar? What was their workspace like? Where did they mix it? Where did they get the water? Who washed the tools? Did you have a level? Did you have a square?
Can't use salt water. Can you, Kairos? Salt water for grout mortar?
They say it's the strongest of all the concretes, and concrete allowed to cure literally underwater, under salt water, might be the strongest of them all. It's not something you would see used on a modern job site.
Would it make sense to use it to mix mortar for bricks?
I'd love to experiment with it and just give it a try. But if anything, I would expect it would probably cause the mortar to set faster. The chemical process will change. If many people that are studying these, so there's established brick on top of a mound. So that's we'll let it focus. That's brick. So we're gonna see that those are brick joints, and it's on top of a melted mound on the end of one of the oldest structures we know about in this region. So why weren't we told what might have happened that caused that? And that's I don't know how they wouldn't build on top of that. Those are lines,
Yeah. Oh yeah, look at
and
that.
there's plenty of other areas, and see, and then up on top you can see that it's just brick. It looks like the entire wall had toppled over,
Hmm.
and then right over there to the right is the literal brick, the little brick.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I recommend going here for an explorer. I'm looking forward to going back very soon to do the larger tour. Not sure exactly when yet. Um, Last time I was pretty excited and I was moving the camera around and didn't have the things figured out. That's pretty typical of a first visit of a place. If you're doing this kind of thing, it's pretty exciting. When you see something that everyone else is occupied, they're not understanding. There's this ranger. He's like, oh, he saw me. Same guy. He's like, wow.
No more questions.
I asked the guys at the Fort Point. I put them on they wouldn't be on camera either, though. They didn't want to.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So amazing construction at an early time period, built for a purpose, yet never realized. And then how are they expecting Civil War fighters to arrive here? So we have to like, what would their route be? Because these are sea forts, so they're expecting a sea invasion. So
Yeah.
if you're an East Coast South Civil War fighter, what's your game plan?
Yeah, I saw Confederate Raiders I think was the wording in that Fort Wiki that you
And
sent.
that's an amazing trip. How could you ever do it? And then
Ooh.
if you made it, everybody would be so tired and full of scurvy they couldn't even fight.
Well, where would they be coming from? Confederate Raiders. That's what I was trying to figure out. They go
I think
down
it's
around the
I
Horn.
think it's because yeah, you got to go all the way south. There's no Panama Canal, so it's
Yeah.
like the longest sea trip available.
Just to raid San
So the
Francisco.
thing is, but we're ready though. See, we are ready.
I know.
And then once they realize, okay, the threat is over, let's abandon it. Just abandon it. So a lot of these walls are thicker than people realize. 7, 10, sometimes more. I believe the walls of Philadelphia City Hall, 25 feet thick. Yes.
Hmm.
So we're looking at the constructed shoreline, full of debris. The wall is impervious to overtopping due to sea level rise or any type of thing like that. It simply does not happen. That dark line is as high as the ocean gets, period. In all historical photos, never changed. So we've been to Alcatraz. So Alcatraz, very exciting. And we've got one more little trip.
I can't get over that Confederate story. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
It seems incredible, the whole idea, and the distances that materials were being moved, extreme, and the number of people limited.
Yeah. Like, what
Okay,
would the justification be? Would be to protect the gold? I don't understand why it would be so heavily defended. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's oops, I dropped my device. Where'd it go?
It's so illogical, right? That's the problem with all of this. Their narratives are so illogical.
So these stories, they're not logical. So we have to think of, before I hit play on this one, just notice these blocks. Okay, those are not two. That's one, and that's not a normal angle. Very unusual, very plumb, very exacting. Let's roll this, and I'd love for you to
One sec. One
give
sec.
me a.
Just, can you? What do you take on? We got Lisa asking. So what happened? Wants an answer, it looks like. Does anyone have answers to know what actually happened here? I don't.
I have suspicions. I've
Mm,
got like an intuition and a gut feeling, but it seems like this might have been some attempt to fend off something, and it probably didn't work.
mm,
And I think that these, the for all of these structures to be built at the same time in the same fashion and essentially unused and then abandoned, that seems too coincidental. I don't know where they came up with all the money and the people. So this is a different time period.
mm.
It's a different time period we're seeing.
Yeah.
I would say. I'm going to roll this, and we're going to look if it'll work. We seem to be having a problem.
Close it, open it again. I'll put it back up, maybe.
Yeah.
You always seem to find is more questions, right? It's not, I'm not providing
Right.
answers,
Right.
suspicions, theories, hypotheses, but yeah. But we know it's not the story they're telling us. I think we can agree on that. History in general, really.
My computer's been pretty good this whole time, but right now it's
Fort
I'm going to
Point.
give it a minute or so. I don't think
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'll just show the
We'll see
viewers
what
again
happens.
your channel. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So we're talking, Kairos is presenting his investigations into these 3 fort/batteries in the San Francisco area. He does amazing boots on the ground videos, and you can find him here. The link is in the description. This is his YouTube channel. Um, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and certainly it's invaluable to those of us that can't get to these locations to see this kind of stuff. It just reaffirms our suspicions of what we suspect about the truth of our past, I think. And if you are looking to contribute to Kairos's work, he does have a Venmo. It is here linked on his about section on the YouTube as well.
I
So
do appreciate that. It's I want to assure people that the purpose of my channel is not to earn a living, but feels expensive, and so is the admission to Alcatraz, and I would certainly love to get there sooner than later. So it looks like I don't know if I'm going to be able to open this. It seems to be giving me grief on my final presentation. I'm going to give it just a second. I would be happy to field a couple questions while I'm trying to tame my robot.
I notice you're playing around with the AI a little bit in some of your videos too. I find those fun.
I'm not sure what to think of them. They so just real briefly, so this little character that I put together was after a lot of inputs, a lot of work, a lot of subjects, a lot of I don't want to say manipulating the conversation, but it is correcting the narrative out from under the AI. You have to train it to stop using illogical stories. You
Mm,
force it if the narrative is impossible in one story, then it's impossible in every story in that time period. And then once the AI acknowledges that, it will stop trying to convince you of the narrative and maybe be open to some more logical conversation. So once I felt like I had fully introduced the content of my research into the discussion, then I forced the AI to become this robotic character. He's supposed to be an unemployed gold miner turned mason building the various brick things, specifically Fort Point. That is the narrative. So it was told that the gold rush was wrapping up and they needed to build this fort. And they figured that if you were an unemployed gold miner, so like the bottom of the barrel, cannot even keep your job, you're going to do master craftsmanship, which is not okay. Well, I'm sad about my computer misbehaving right now. I'm happy that it made it all the way through. There's one little tiny workaround. If we wanted to try it, you
Sure.
could go right there on my channel and go to my playlist up on the top up there. And I believe we've got a nice little Fort Point section. And there's the one, yeah, Fort Point. You can see it right there on the middle left. So it's
Yeah,
that one.
here.
Yep. So
Okay.
maybe just view the playlist first, or if you'd like to let this play for a moment, if you don't mind. So
Yeah,
sound
sure.
off. Sound off. Yeah.
Can
I'm gonna.
you hear the
I'm gonna.
sound? Could you hear that sound?
I know it has sound, but I did not hear.
Yeah. Okay.
So for those that have not seen my channel or visited, this is the opening video for non-subscribers. This is maybe one of the most important places in the greater Bay Area because of the amazing construction. So we're driving in, and this is like a concrete wall or covered up, but then it's going to make a direct and different change up here where you see the geometry. All these chains have been removed recently, and they have a different style of fence, but it's still easy to come in and see. So now we've come to the edge of the constructed shoreline, which is this megalithic polygonal seawall. So each of the bricks or the blocks that make up this wall are a repeating pattern, same size, same shape, machine marks in place, all said to have been from China. So it's 1,800 feet long. The foundation is below sea level. There's metal between the joints instead of mortar. And the Golden Gate Bridge anchor points are contained within it. So they had an opportunity to tear this place down, but when considering the build of the Golden Gate, it's the anchors inside and over here behind this fortress.
Quick question here. Metal
Yep.
sheets between, just like Malta. What do you think of that, Kairos? Poured granite?
There's machine marks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been through a saw, and the metal, it seems like it would have something to do with electricity. This seems to be for a piezoelectric purpose. You've got the weight, you've got the right materials, you've got a good location, you've got the salt water, and then the internals are extremely questionable, very questionable. So have a look at another one on the playlist. Maybe
Okay.
maybe move to the next one.
See the comment there too. This is a good point too. John Levi gets into 4 Point pretty well in his book Old World.
Good.
If people aren't aware of that, definitely check that book out too. He does some great work in there.
So these are some of the historical photos that are available that I've compiled into a slideshow, no pause challenge. And you see the location. You see how large the seawall is. I question some of these photos. Like, are those cannons really on there? Don't know. But look at the seawall now, and it's also concave.
Yeah, crazy.
So multiple layers. Now, there's part of the story that a lot of people are not aware of, and that is once you go into the main structure itself, again, there is a added concrete floor, and there are known cisterns, water cisterns underneath there, and very likely connects to the over 1,000 mile long brick tunnel system of the city. I saw something recently, and it was kind of confusing, and I'm going to tell you what I saw, and you tell me what you think it might mean. So I was at Fort Point when they were closing, and the Rangers were closing the only door in behind them. They were closing for the day, and closing the big door behind them.
Weird.
So how did they go home? Where do you think they went? Did they go
Speed route?
did they go through it? Did they go through a tunnel and up
Hmm.
under the Presidio? We don't know.
Hmm.
But I think it was a relatively decent description of these tremendous buildings. The fact that they're here and the time period. This one here is quite good.
Want me to play this one?
Let this one run for just a moment. We're going to walk up right onto the we're on the wall, and I want you to see the repeating patterns. So you've got the 3, and then the joining single, then you've got a double, and it has a joining single, and then it repeats, and the courses are stacked. That's the joint. So said to be lead. I have not verified. That's some of the historical remarks, but I've seen other areas where there's rust coming out. So I didn't use a magnet, and I didn't use anything else, nor did I take a sample.
They're
But
not rectangular either, are they? The ends of
they're
them.
they're polygonal. So
Crazy.
the top, so the one that I'm looking at right there, it's actually 6-sided from the top.
That's how you
So
lock a joint, hey?
they're all interlocked with interlocking polygons,
Look at
and then
that.
they're
Here.
very weight of themselves, so you can see that. And so
Yeah.
that repeats. That's 1,800 feet long, and it goes below sea level.
Oh, that's
And
unbelievable.
so you'd have to have this in place before you'd start building the fortress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going way back. But these blocks, I think they're about 6,500 pounds each. Big, the big doubles. I think those are 65, and the other ones are. So I want you to see what these boulders are made of. They were added later and set into place, but they're a little suspicious looking as well. So these areas are very accessible, and they're they're part of the park system. So let it zoom in onto this boulder and stop when you can't take it anymore.
How about
Right.
that?
Right. And then have a look. So we'll look at the next. I think there's another boulder that's even more ridiculous. So there's some sort of segmenting, and there seems to be dissimilar materials and possibly squeezing,
Right there, it looks like a grout line to me.
compressing, right?
The brick's almost gone. This one here. That's what I'm seeing.
Right. So this is from somewhere local and put here as
Interesting.
this is supposed to somehow protect the seawall. So they've
Why?
put these in front.
Again, logic. Like protect the seawall from the waves? Preserve the seawall? Is that the
Right,
justification?
they're interlocking granite megalithic stones with a concave surface designed to take the waves built
They
below
seem to be
sea
doing
level.
all right.
They'll be fine. Right, so those earliest photos, those modern photos, you'll see that the boulders actually were not added until the 60s.
Mm.
And then they slowly added them until the boulders are close to the same height as the seawall itself. Probably as a deterrent, so people don't try to imitate the suicide attempt on that movie Vertigo.
Okay,
So like
interesting.
yeah, so that's kind of a joke, kind of true, but so in that movie, when they made the movie, the lady dove off the top of the wall directly into the ocean and had to be rescued. Where now you will dive face first into a boulder. So look at the precision granite that is making up this structure. And again, the ground level has been added, so that goes well below ground. And I noticed a strange little piece. I think I show it to you in a moment to see what you think. So we've got all this incredible granite work, precision work, and then you got that.
Interesting.
The guy, what did the guy hit? Was the first piece he chose was too small, so he had to scab on a piece of crap. The very first piece.
Then he
What
then he
was
didn't
going
make
on
that
with it?
mistake again.
But he made it out in front, so no one would let him live it down.
You know what that reminds me of? The little piece on the
Georgia,
Georgia
Georgia
Guidestones.
Guidestones, yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
weird.
Right, same. They're both made of granite, but so some tourists didn't get the message. These guys are out in the high violation zone, but they didn't know
Wow,
any better. They actually came from the beach around the corner, and it doesn't have signs. But
interesting.
the fence that I was standing on was a warning of a $10,000 fine.
Hmm.
Well, why don't you take the slider on this video and maybe advance it a few minutes, and
Okay.
let's see what's inside the building. Let's find something that attracts your attention.
There's
So we're still
the
outside.
door.
Go ahead. Go ahead and play that on the outside of the building. I think I'll be able to show you the
Yeah.
similarities. There's the rectangular,
Mm-hmm.
both sides, very likely for closing a drawbridge.
Mm-hmm.
Those are granite tops, machined granite
Hmm.
integrated into the masonry, all granite sills on all the levels. So the man closed this huge door, which has a tiny man door built into it. You see that little man door down there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when he closed for the day, I watched him close it up and close it behind him. And that was it. I don't think he lives
Interesting.
in there. So move forward and let's get into the courtyard. There you go. Okay, so
Yeah.
the bottom level is megalithic granite blocks
Hmm. Wow.
with
Perfect too. Machined.
incredible angular precision on the exterior angle.
Wait. Let me go back just a hair.
Okay,
Look at this. This joint right here. Can you see that?
I
I
do
know
now
you
see
see
it.
it. Look at that.
That's odd. That's a real odd one, but
That's
purposeful.
just that's
That was
flaunting. I
that was
feel
made
like
that
that's
way.
like flaunting your skills. I think
Right.
that's
Maybe.
ridiculous because it's logical for a course to continue along this seam, not just
Right.
that again maybe for a locking function,
It could be
for more
built-in
strength.
strength. Well, let's
Mm-hmm.
look and see if there's more of that
Mm-hmm.
detail. But as I get in close, you're going to see the saw marks. You're going to see
Mm-hmm.
the vertical saw
Yeah.
marks, and
Yeah.
that did not pop out of a mold. Um, that's incredible granite, and those are all very
Look
heavy.
at
And
that.
then we start to get into the inverted, vaulted alcoves, and then there's some extreme weathering here. Now notice, I'll ask you to pause when we look down. Go ahead and advance it till we're looking through the corridor of the cannons. I'm spying on rangers here.
There.
Let's go inside, and I would like to show you the condition of the floor. Okay, so I'm going in and stop.
Hmm.
Okay, do you see those curved inlays on the floor between the two
Uh,
benches? You see the
yeah.
lines that intersect the
Oh
main.
yeah.
Okay, so when you roll the video, watch for that detail all throughout the building, but you're going to notice that there are core bore drill bit holes in the middle, and that
Here.
used to all be overlaid with refined metal, some of it still in place. So this
Hmm.
had a lot more to go ahead and let it roll and watch the archwork. It's on every floor. They say this is to support cannons they never installed.
You know what I thought that was? Or I thought that was a wooden pathway at first.
These are huge
Like,
stones.
that's crazy. Yeah.
These are
Weird.
massive, and they're on all floors throughout
Hmm.
the building. So I really would love to look again and see if the internal is granite and the exterior might be limestone, which would create an insulation. So granite has
Hmm.
quartz, so granite has electrical potential, or the limestone is more like an insulator, similar to what you'd find on the outside of a spark plug. This is supposedly what they had. They built this amazing fort, and this is their weapon.
It's cute. It's cute.
Look at that thing.
Little button cannon.
You shoot it one time, and then yeah. So how
I don't
about
think
so we're
it'll
going to
go
look
very
at
far.
these. So look at the machine marks again in the
Vertical
stone.
lines. Yeah. That's right there. You can see it clearly. This one
So
showing
the
it, right?
shadow reveals, and if we look carefully, I'm not able to tell from this photo, but it might be, if there's any arc to the vertical lines
I
that
don't think
indicates,
so.
like, it's hard to tell. And
It look
sometimes you have to have a stone that's 10 feet tall to see it. But
well, yeah.
the ones in
You need a
the ones in
serious
Egypt show,
radius. Yeah.
that's exactly correct. So what you're seeing, if it's vertical,
Mm-hmm.
it's a reciprocating saw with a straight blade.
Mm-hmm.
If it's got an arc to it, it was cut by a round blade. So
There
we
you go.
need to
That's a good
look and see, detect, does it have any arc? The ones that some of the explorers, Brian Forrester, show in Egypt clearly show the arced machine cuts, clear as day,
Interesting.
and the machine boreholes
Mm.
through solid granite. So look at the ridiculous amount of granite that is involved in this build, and think about each one of those blocks being removed somehow out of the bottom of a Chinese junk.
Mm-hmm. In the 1830s to 50s, 30s to 60s, is that the timeline they give us on this one?
So this
It's
is
it's
it's 1860s. They're trying to
60s.
the Civil
That's
War,
right.
third system of forts. It's right at the gold rush time. It's one of the
They
earliest buildings.
but didn't they start it before the Civil War happened?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
That's what the
because they
story.
know.
So while you've got it, so notice while you have the still, people hear about the term brick bond, and they may
Mm-hmm.
think, just the fact that they're connected with mortar, and that is a type of bond. But what you're pointing to is the orientation of the brick itself. So it
Mm-hmm.
goes one direction, and then it goes internally another direction, and then it repeats. So it's a veneer or a facade wall would not include that detail. It's just
Mm-hmm.
attached to an existing freestanding structure. So you look at those walls, that's some of the strongest brick construction that you can make. It's interlocked every other course.
And
And
this is
it's
one, yeah, 1 for 1. I think you said it was 4 for 1 over at the other
there's some
fort.
that are five. You'll see three,
Five
four,
for one.
five. But this one becomes, and the walls are said to be 7 feet thick in certain areas. Um, Maybe scroll to another area that catches your attention.
One thing I want to mention too is the
Yeah,
way that the arch intersects with the horizontal brick here. Can you still make that out there? How it's stepped like that?
that's correct. And it gets more intense as we enter the building. The arches are perfect in precision, and the geometry is true. They're really, so here's the floor with the area that had countersunk core bit attached metal in a
And
wave shape that goes around the perimeter of the exterior on all levels.
and
Those
you're
are
you've laid a lot of tiles. Those are some tight grout joints, wouldn't you agree?
so these appear to be large cut stone pavers and not thin tiles. These are boulders. So these are,
Which which would even be more difficult to keep those tight.
especially when they have so many sides that interlock with so many other angles that are not common.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So see that wave on the floor? See
Oh,
where see the inlay?
let me go back.
Yeah, just let that play.
Okay. Yeah, right there. Yeah,
So
going
each
all the way down.
each one of those waves is said to be where a metal rail would have been attached to attach the back of a cannon, which would be pivoting in the center of every alcove and shooting out these holes in the wall. That's so you can aim it.
So you
So
could
you see,
swivel the cannon all
that's
along that
that's
line.
the purpose of that. So they went through all the trouble of all those inlays, all that drilling, all that refined metal, because it's not steel. It appears in some of the areas, it appears to be an alloy. Some of
Mm-hmm.
it's still intact, some of it's melted beyond recognition, but some of it looks, it has the appearance of bronze.
Interesting.
Upstairs,
Okay.
there's some intact. So if you're up for it, I've got about 18 minutes of this video if we watch it all, and I think that would be a great place to stop. And
Sure.
you set the pace.
Well, I'm glad
But
we were able to look at this fort point because this is crazy. This is
so that's an octagonal stairwell that we're coming upon that's made out of granite. And peekaboo, it has a self-supporting stacked granite slabs, 3-story tall stairway. And
Easy
it's
to
not the
do.
only one. Not the only one.
You ever built one of those?
Of course.
I can't even
Yeah,
fathom it. Sorry, go ahead.
right,
Oh,
right.
look at the law.
It would be, I
Look
think
at,
it'd be difficult even just to make a model of that.
yeah, absolutely.
So we have cast iron internals opening into those structures. We're going to go up them. So very unusual old metal. Um, Seems like it should be a lot rustier, being the
Hmm.
sea salt environment, but it seems like it's pretty good. So here we're on another floor, and we've got these arced inlaid metal.
Hmm.
Just remember, everyone's supposed to be for a cannon that's supposed to be sitting here, so you can shoot out one of these oven doors. I think there's pizza ovens out there that have bigger doors than these. So look at the shape. So there was metal on there, and when we zoom in and start looking carefully, you're going to find a very unusual characteristic to the metal rod that is embedded in the granite hole is surrounded by some sort of an insulating material, possibly non-conductive material to insulate these metal wave shapes that may have had a greater purpose. Huge stones, but there seems to be some discoloration and an effect of the stones that only had the metal. See that?
Hmm. Yes, definitely.
The ones that had the metal have got accelerated erosion, where the other ones, I don't think that was a
Hmm.
remodel. No way.
Interesting.
That's
Yeah,
original.
interesting.
So it's all the same style of perfect barrel vaulted, heavy arch, seismically impervious build. So this is in the district of San Francisco that has experienced the worst damage of historical earthquakes. So we're out the back window, and that's the other side of the seawall. Goes around the entire building, and then goes up and goes around the coast a bit. I'd like to get down there at high tide and have a look at the seawall, low tide rather, yes, um, and have a look at the base of the seawall
Hmm.
and show that concave surface that's built in. So those are octagonal towers.
Well, it was one thing. Do you think they maybe put all that debris there to hide the concave surface? Is that's something that came to my mind?
I I think just to keep eyes off the fact that those are too big. I mean, there's
Hmm.
no one builds with the size blocks like that now.
Yeah.
I mean, even the concrete block construction that people are using is smaller.
Hmm. And that's poured concrete. Hmm.
So there's said to be cisterns underneath the main floor. So you can see the shape. This is a star fort.
Hmm.
So here is, you can see where I am, and you can see another spiral staircase, which we're going to go look at. So each
So,
one of those is a precision teardrop shaped interior. What is that? Is that a 200-degree round on that?
hmm.
It's like a, and then it's integrated into
The
the
brick.
masonry of the brick wall.
Yeah.
How
Unbelievable.
far? How far back does it go in there? But these are huge, perfect, amazing. You can see the grain within the granite itself going through. Appears as if it was quarried. You've got some of that streaking with the various components
Hmm.
within the granite.
Hmm.
Granite is one of the harder stones. Typically, it can only be cut with a harder stone, so diamond. Diamond embedded saw blades are typical for commercial sawing, but this is 50 years before the power tool. So
Hmm.
up we go in this very precision. So it's a octagonal exterior and a circular interior,
Mhm.
just for added difficulty. So these
Right.
huge granite slabs create the perimeter of the upper stair landing. So now we're on top of one of these batteries and we find out that they are made of megalithic granite, and they have holes drilled into them with looks like what might be electrodes. And there was a ring around the perimeter of this granite that resembles what we saw on the floors down below, made of metal,
Mhm.
which was supposed to give the cannon operator a 360-degree rotation of firing his cannon. So that looks like melted brick coming out of there.
Yeah.
So there was another ring on the internal also set into this granite. So notice there's an internal square with this button on the top, but then there's the
Yeah.
octagonal theme
Yeah. Yeah.
contained
Wow.
within,
Wow.
and that has a drop off the corner. So you
Yeah,
see
I
that
was just that just
that's
caught my eye.
right. So
Or
tremendous. So to me, these have the resemblance of the top of a like a Duracell battery. You've got that
interesting.
knob on top, and then you've got that pointy nub on top, which very likely could have had
Yeah.
larger connections, um, allowing them to be connected within in series.
Hmm.
So the
This
location is
stone
unusual.
blows me
Those are
away. This the way that they've beveled this and then they've notched it as well to fit here.
how about that? How
Like,
about that inside 90 with a perfect fit?
how do you clean that out? Your chisel has to be sharp.
That's one of the more difficult cuts in modern construction and tile cutting. A lot of people that are not careful, and with woodwork, is they'll tend to overcut, and you'll
Yep.
end up with. And a lot of guys don't care, and they'll just put some caulking in there and call it a day.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what you'll see with the modern construction at this location. But you'll never see that level.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So this is on top of every one of these, and there's no end to them. They
They put
go
a little
around and
pad
around.
over top of that one, it looks like.
There's a couple that have that, and those ones seem to have the most damage, suspiciously, as if something was overloading and it was an emergency cap. That's what I see it as. So
Interesting.
this one here in pretty
Right
good
here,
shape.
this. Yeah.
That one there has been covered. And notice some of the metal, you'll see it as we progress. Some of
Okay.
the metal ring is left behind. So we're going to see out the top and the view and the extreme. Some of
Wow.
these bricks have multiple angles built into them.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And it's a 7 foot
Wow.
thick wall and cowboys.
That's didn't need to gold mine that day.
What do we have? Right. This is unemployed gold miners. The guy could not cut it at the sluice, so he's going to build this. So it's very accessible, but look at the detail even all the way up to the very top. And this is precision. And I would love to have a transit nearby and see if it's flat and level. I'm
Looks
thinking
like it.
it's more, it's likely is. And
Hmm.
the shadow is a great revealer. The shadow is a revealer of secrets. So as you watch that shadow, you'll see that the variation of the shadow in relationship to the mortar joint is perfect.
Hmm.
So here we have that's an internal octagonal tower that houses the additional spiral staircase. One's open, one's closed. So this one has been capped. So for
Hmm.
some reason, that supposed gun mount wore out, and they had to cap it.
Okay.
It wore out or something. So notice this one has some of its metal left around that ring, and there's more putty-like brick,
Yep.
squeezing out of the brick-infested aggregate. This one has a huge cap. Another
Hmm.
cap right on top. They needed the guy needed a step stool or something. So here they've capped this whole area,
Huh. Yep.
and then we're going to notice that the main component capped in concrete. See if you can detect some of the only damage to the actual surface of the red brick itself in this section. Keep your eyes open.
Right down there.
Look at the surface.
Hmm.
What does that?
Hmm.
What does that? It's wrecked.
Weird.
It's looking like lava rock you see in somebody's yard, that red
Mm-hmm.
garbage, that landscaping stuff. And I thought that was kind of funny. I saw this random battery. Like it was a
Yeah.
little, it's like some kind of a sign. It is a battery, huh? But look how damaged it happens to be near the battery that they happen to cap. Are they related?
Oh,
Did
interesting.
something crazy happen? And you can see, so notice that's a great place to have stilled. There was some replacement bricks right next to it. You could clearly see.
Go back.
Go ahead and let it roll, and we'll come right
Yeah.
upon it. There's replacement bricks, right? Those two, those are
Mm-hmm.
replacements. Those are not the original bricks.
Mm.
So something happened
Here,
in that.
replacement all
That's
along
all
here.
replacement. It's all been
Yes.
changed. And that white
That.
on top beyond the bricks, that's
Mm-hmm.
a new surface. That's not the
And I
original surface.
fresh caulking along the back here too, along the
Correct.
back of these bricks. And this is looks like a replacement possibly as well. You
That's
see?
right. So this is a popular spot for tourists because it's directly underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, and the views are spectacular. You can see the Farallon Islands from this location on a clear day, which you should never be able to see on any day. So here is the another one of the towers, and we have the continuation of the brick-lined, granite-lined metal structure over and over. And it seems really extreme to install a cannon.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's probably, now this one has the metal.
Oh yeah.
It's got the metal.
Yeah.
So it's got
Oh
really
wow.
unusual dimensional metal with bizarre patina. It has the appearance of bronze or some other alloy to me. Why those are set directly into the insulated granite, I don't know that. And the machine marks clearly seen. So I would assume that each one of those exterior octagonal components of these batteries are likely interchangeable throughout the site. They probably are a standard size.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're all specifically a little different than each other. Now look at now this one here. Looks like an emergency cap, and the metal is still
Yes.
squeezing out of the cracking
Wow.
concrete. So how did that metal turn into that and come out from underneath whatever they did? So amazing fasteners, but look at that undermining, almost like it was dripping out from itself,
Yeah.
possibly. So I'm not quite sure what they were really doing here, but it seems like that's a really, really big building, just in case these guys might mobilize in wooden boats and get here.
The Confederate raiders.
I think the only story that's more ridiculous as far as the American star forts go is Fort Jefferson,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So we're on another side with a different type of battery, but we see the massive granite pieces, the embedded electrodes or rods, the missing metal set up in a wave pattern. And this one has a unique feature. They terminate into sort of a pentagram, five-sided keystone. Now,
You know
ground
what?
level, that's not original ground level you're seeing. All added concrete.
Mm.
Those
It's
all
real
go down.
reminding me of the pattern that we saw lower down, built into the floor itself. It's the same pattern, isn't it?
That's correct. That's what I was asking you to look out for. So you've seen that clearly. It's easy to
Mm.
see. The pattern has been recognized. So
Mm.
it's on all floors. Someone is using a core bit to drill through that granite and
Mm.
set some sort of a metal. Did you see that white material that was kind of squeezing out
Mm.
between each one of those pegs? When we walk along, continuing to walk on top of the granite. So here's see the caulking between the added
Yeah.
roof section. So it's
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah.
It's not the original. It's almost like they decided to they turned this area into some sort of a quarters when it wasn't originally that.
Mm.
So look at that white
Around
around
them.
the
Yeah.
studs.
Yeah.
It's almost it has the appearance. Have you ever used a heat shrink,
Mm-hmm.
and when you hit it with the heat, it oozes out like that at the end.
Mm-hmm.
The shrink tubing. So
Hmm.
it has a similar appearance to that, but the metal is all gone. So again, each one of these would have been to hold a single wheel on a cannon that would be able to rotate into place. All these cannons are facing friendly fire. These are all facing the main. These are all facing the Golden
Oh
Gate
yeah,
Bridge.
interesting.
So these would not be, this entire row of gun mounts would not be able to hit boats. Notice the condition of the metal in the center. I'm showing where it's been, looks like it's been burned out or shorted out. But here, you've got some very unusual markings in the casting. Like those markings probably did not come from the foundry that way.
Mm-hmm.
So now look at the geometry of the seawall. First of all, that's the granite wall that we
Mm.
walked in on.
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
I was
But
gonna
then,
say, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's all yours.
Well, it just can't help but shake the thought that the San Francisco earthquake and these maybe are connected. Like if they were weapons or could be used as weapons, were they turned on the city itself? That's just something that's running through my mind as we're going through this.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
Mm.
I'm wondering about the true purpose of the Fresnel lens, which all of
Mm.
these fortresses had. So they're able to move light efficiently. Can they
Mm-hmm.
receive light efficiently? If they can, send and receive light, then they can receive and transmit data and or power.
Mm.
It's the same. So how about that? Look at that angle right there.
Oh, that's why I stopped it. It's
I mean,
unbelievable.
how do you even deal with that? It's even got a keystone brick on the top of
Yeah,
this
I was
outrageous
gonna
wall.
say that that's a different brick. That it's wider. Yeah. Wow.
So a lot of these, some of the bricks have special shapes that were not made from a brick on site. They
Look
were
at this.
made that way somewhere else.
So what's the implication of that as far as the build process goes? This is not just a stack of bricks that you're shaping, right? These have to be the pre-planning here. The
That's right.
thought that goes into building this is beyond comprehension. It's certainly not allowed for in the narrative. We've already thrown that out, but
So when you step inside the main courtyard down below and you're surrounded by those arches, you realize that they had to start somewhere on their
mm,
project so that every single arch met perfectly every time.
unbelievable.
Self-supporting, indestructible. This is like the extreme epicenter. So when you look back at the shoreline, that marina district, that's the area that got ruined. That's where the structurally engineered freeways fell down.
In
We're
the
right
96
there.
earthquake,
89.
89, sorry. Yeah.
So here we see they have covered up a lot of floors with boardwalks, but the granite is here, large pieces, but then there's asphalt behind us, wooden shacks put on top. Clearly, they would not have built with that wood on top of there. These guys, they did not need to build with wood. So there's a lot of things missing. These squares that have like tar on top of them, no idea what those are.
Hmm.
It was a whirlwind of a trip, and it was extremely windy. And I'm still battling microphone operation. I'm just about there to where I can have really great sound and zero wind. Almost there.
Hmm.
But notice this, that's a huge slab on that upper landing before you step down into the geometry. So that's a perfect interior circle with an octagonal frame going into a circular barrel with an octagonal exterior,
Wow.
all integrated. So I haven't even seen, really nice elevation drawings of this building just after the fact put together by historians, let
Mm-hmm.
alone blueprints. A lot of people that are not in construction are not aware of how large a set of plans is today for a modern building. Um, don't know if you use the same slang. I haven't worked on plans for a while, but when you receive a set of plans for a building, the architects might refer to it as a log,
Mm-hmm.
a log, because it's as big around as a log. This thing is huge and it's very heavy, and there's lots and lots of pages, and the detail is ridiculous. You wouldn't be able to start a project like this, let alone know what materials to even call for, if you didn't have a log.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have those drawings. I mean, look at that precision. You can't just do anything.
The degree of coordination between workers would be absolutely the communication and coordination that you would have to be in constant communication with each other to make sure everything's in the right place.
So how about those? Look at those interlocking keystones that go on the
Yeah,
radius.
yeah. I tried to pause on one of those earlier.
Right.
They're crazy. It's
Right.
like the Peruvian, the famous Peruvian blocks, except for they're all over the place.
Right. Yeah, they seem to be. But notice the condition of the brick. Very good. Not degraded. Very. It's very unusual inside of some of these passageways. It's very quiet, and the climate is somewhat controlled, especially inside of that battery Cavalo. Once you're away and out of the direct elements, it changes to a different feel. It's
Interesting.
some of the areas, on the other hand, the wind accelerates and it becomes the last place you want to be. It just depends on.
Interesting.
That's extremely decayed iron, very similar
Here.
to the riveted iron that you saw as we were coming out of the construction that looked near identical at Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
these two are within sight of each other. This fortress has had other names. Fort Point is kind of a name that would really not raise any type of suspicion, whereas it's originally Fort Scott, and possibly they are giving it a castle designation from 1776. And this building may be represented on the California Great Seal, sometimes shown with a dome. So if we were to imagine what this structure, Fort Point, that we were touring would look like if you were inside that inner courtyard, if it had a roof similar to a Crystal Palace. So what would it be, its features, especially if there's known cisterns underneath and you're potentially routing power in a controlled method?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it possible the water was able to be elevated and run through the different floor levels, and those so-called cannon doors could have been relief valves, maybe? You're able to bring the water level up to whatever you please. We really don't know, so there's a lot of imagination and speculation, and sometimes our imagination and intuition turns out to be correct. Can't
Well,
always be.
I think we're hot on the trail of something, that's for sure. You're doing amazing work, and
Yep.
I'm glad I'm able to present it here on my channel.
Well, I'm going to try to convince you to come down here.
I'd love to
have a little explore.
Yeah,
There's
I'd have to bring the kids down. They wouldn't hear. I'd never hear the end of it if I didn't bring the whole fam.
You should. You should. There's lots of interesting things to do, and you don't have to spend a fortune to do it. And it's so there's another part of this San Francisco story that people have heard of, the different world fairs. Maybe the most famous one, 1915, but there were two others, and they were huge and had massive. I don't know if there's any other cities that have 3 world fairs within a couple of miles of each other, within sight of each other.
3 different locations. They didn't
3
reuse
separate locations, all that have remnant construction, and all the narratives are garbage. They want to say they built the 635-acre Pan Pacific property in 2 years. All 635 acres, including the grading. So
That's crazy.
I have a time believing that the workers of that time would be able to build the terraformed land and foundation area for that battery Cavalo and build it in 2 years. I don't think just that one fortress would be even possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you have any great questions, or if people want to give me a robotic high five, I'll take that.
And if you're not subbed to Kairos' channel, make sure you sub to his channel and check out his work. It's yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I feel like we're coming on with this research. I think we're getting a decent footing beneath us, as far as what may have happened here, what the true purpose for these buildings really were. You know, I think personally, anyway, I'm past that stage of doubt, where, you know, I'm not sure what I'm seeing. And it's thanks to the work that people like you do and Mark does, and Shawnee in the chat, a lot of explorers in the chat, a lot of boots on the ground people in the chat tonight. So I want to say thank you to all you guys that
I appreciate everyone
do that.
continually offering the support, offering encouragement. Again, this is not for making money. This is for sharing what we think will be helpful to others to see a greater picture and purpose. I've enjoyed your series on the city halls, and the capitals.
Capitals, yeah. I got one on some courthouses coming up as well. Indiana courthouses. The courthouses
I
are
would
ridiculous.
sure like you to find a way to use some of my interior footage from the San Francisco City Hall Explorer I've done recently, one of my last videos.
Okay.
There's extreme interior coverage, but it's bigger than the DC Dome. This is a 2-year build with a dome taller than Washington, D.C. at the same time as the Pan-Pacific build. So it's got a 1913 to 15 finish date, right after the cataclysmic earthquake, right after the complete rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
Have a look inside and listen to the acoustics. If you haven't seen the San Francisco City Hall tour, please watch.
And you're okay if I make my own video out of your video?
I'd actually prefer that you did. It would save me a little time.
Okay, I'll go through it.
Please do.
I'll put that on my list for sure.
And you're welcome to have my files and stills if you think that they'd be useful, even for your research. You know, part of the problem with putting together these videos and these tours is you have to make choices on what I get to show you. Mm-hmm. Everyone has got their own life, and we do not have time to see every mortar joint, every brick joint. You know, I don't have time. Yeah. So I try to pick the best things, and I also I do have a very respectable and pleasant, polite audience. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank those that are going out of their way to comment. I am reading the comments, and I do appreciate them, and it does lead me in different research topics and directions, and I'm not having to chase people off and do the whack a troll. You don't have to smash them down.
Yeah. People are pretty receptive to this stuff for sure. Okay, I think that's probably a good place to cut it off for the evening. Any last words, Kairos?
I'm looking for a cold beer. That's my final thought.
I'll let you get to it. And I want to thank everyone for joining. If you're watching the replay, appreciate you watching. Hit the thumbs up, throw a comment in, and we'll do this again, of course.
Thank you.
Take care. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.